So then what is coding? It is a process of translating an analyzed problem in terms of algorithm and flowchart into any of the given programming language. The syntax is a set of rules. So we have to follow that rule while creating the statements of a program. I'm taking two variables A and B. I'm adding those two variables and I'm copying the value of that variable to sum. Hello everyone, welcome back to the session 5 and 5th chapter, that is problem solving methodology. Myself Rohini TS, lecturer in computer science, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Mysuru. So in my last session, we had a discussion regarding some of the example program, that means some of the examples for flowchart. So in last session, we had a discussion regarding how to write a flowchart for a given algorithm. Along with that, we had a discussion regarding advantages and disadvantages of flowchart. So if you remember all the flowchart examples, then that will be important question. So they are going to specify that write a flowchart for the given problem. So at that time, by making use of the symbols, flowchart symbols, you are supposed to write a flowchart for the given problem. So which symbols we are going to use? So there we are going to use the terminal in order to start or stop, and we are going to use the parallelogram in order to give the input and output. How the processing will going to happen? That will be with the help of this rectangular symbol. And to make the decision, we are going to use the rhombus, that is either for branching or for decision making. Okay, so and we are also going to use this connector, and we are also going to use this data flow in order to represent the flow of a data. So these directions were used. So that is regarding how to write a example program for flowchart. Then when it comes to the advantages and disadvantages of flowchart, what are the advantages? It is independent of programming languages. So with the help of this flowchart, you can convert that flowchart into any of the programming languages. So that means what? It is independent of the programming language. It does not depend on any of the programming language, and it is well for the communication purpose. Right? And it also helps to get to know the data flow. So that is proper documentation will be there, and it acts as a guide or a manual. So with the help of this, we are going to convert the given problem into any of the programming languages. So it is well known for the maintenance. That means it will going to give the efficient coding technology. So what are the disadvantages then? So you know that flowchart is nothing but it is a graphical or a pictorial representation. So when we are writing this flowchart, it will take more time. Okay, if it is textual form, it will take less time, but when it comes to the pictorial or a graphical representation, at that time we must be very conscious. So if there are any upgradations or if there are any modification required, we have to redraw it. So that will be the main disadvantage. So when it comes to the disadvantage, so we are supposed to redraw the whole flowchart if you want to change or if you want to modify the data flow. Okay, so that will also be one of the disadvantage of this flowchart. And it is take more time. So that is, it takes more time. It is time consuming. So if the problem is simple, then that will be okay. What if the problem is complex? So the complex logic representation by making use of this flowchart is also difficult. So that is, representation of a complex logic is also difficult with the help of this flowchart. So these are all the advantages and disadvantages of a flowchart. Then when it comes to the pseudo code, so here neither a programming code or it is neither an algorithm. We are going to represent the given problem in terms of English like words. It is easy to understand and it is easy to get to know what is the problem and how we are giving the solution. So these are the topics that I have discussed in my last session. So in today's session, we are going to learn about the development of a program. This is also known as what? coding. So here we are going to write a program. That means we are going to convert an algorithm and flowchart into any of the high-level programming languages. That is regarding development of a programs. So which stage it is? So first we need to specify, then analysis. After that we are going to write a designing tools. That means we are going to find a solution by making use of the designing tools, that is algorithm and flowchart. So once the design is done, we have to develop a program. So that is nothing but what? Coding, which is the next stage of problem solving, that is testing and debugging. So here we are going to find errors in the given program or in the written program. Then how we are going to rectify that error? That comes under debugging. So we are all done with all the stages. At last what I am supposed to do? It has to be documented. So that is documentation and maintenance. So maintenance in the sense what? So if there any upgradation requires or if any modification required, it is like endless task, that is regarding maintenance. So these are the contents that I am going to discuss in today's session. Let me get into the session now. So till now we have designed a solution for the given problem, that too in terms of by making use of algorithm and a flowchart. Now it's our turn to convert that algorithm and a flowchart into any of the higher level programming language. So that is nothing but what? It is a coding or a programming. That means what? It is a process of writing a program instruction for an analyzed problem. So what was the second stage? We have analyzed what are the inputs required, what are the output required, how it will going to work. So that comes as a programming now. So that is coding or a programming. It is a process of writing a program instruction for an analyzed problem. So without analysis, we cannot get to know what are the inputs and outputs required and how the methodology will going to work. So we have to write a programming instruction to the analyzed program or a problem in a programming language. So this programming language can be user choice. Okay, so that algorithm and flowcharts are independent of a programming languages. So then what we can call this coding or a programming? It is a process of translating the algorithm or a flowchart into the syntax of a given programming language. So given purpose language in the sense it is of user choice. So I can write a code in use by making use of the C program or a C++, Python, Java or any of the programming languages that I can choose. So it will be mainly based on the user specification. So then what is coding? It is a process of translating an analyzed problem in terms of algorithm and flowchart into any of the given programming language. So this is nothing but coding or a programming. So now we have written a code. Then which is the next step? We have to test. So how the testing will going to happen then? So testing is nothing but it is a process of checking. It is a process of checking whether the program works according to the requirement of the user. So in testing, we are going to check whether the given solution is working according to the user requirement or not. What is the main agenda of using this testing? Here we get to know that whether our requirement satisfy our conditions. So that is the main thing. It is a process of checking whether the given solution or whether the given solution to the problem is working according to the requirement of the user or not. So that is regarding testing. It is also important for 1 mark question. What is testing and what is debugging? It is also important for 1 mark questions. Okay. Then what is debugging? So we have written a code and we have checked whether this program is working fine as per my requirement or not. Then what do you mean by debugging? So here debugging is a process of identifying and correcting or removing the bugs. So bugs are nothing but what? Errors. So debugging in the sense what? We are going to checking and we are going to correcting. So if there any mistakes happen. So I have written a code as per my knowledge. Then I'm going to check that code. That is testing. So what I'm doing in a testing, I'm going to check whether this program is working as per my requirements or not. So if it is okay, then there will be no problem. So if there any error occur or if there any mistakes happen, so at the process we are going to debug. So debug in the sense what? We are going to checking and we are going to correct it. So, or we are going to remove the mistakes. That mistakes are nothing but what? Errors. That is also known as bugs. Okay. So, debugging is a process of correcting, mainly we have to identify first. So it is a process of identifying and correcting, or we can also remove that errors or a bugs. That is nothing but what? Debugging. So understand one thing, first we have to write a program, then we are going to check whether it is working according to the user requirement or not. So if it is running according to the user requirement, then there will be no problem. If there any mistakes occurs, then that has to be identified and that mistakes or errors must be rectified. That stage is known as what? Debugging. So then, what are the types of errors can be occurred? So that is nothing but what? There are 4 types of errors. Very, very important question. What do you mean by error or what is debugging? Mention the types of errors or explain the types of errors. Important question. So here we have 4 types of errors. What are the possibility of getting these errors? So it can be any of the 4 types. That is syntax errors, runtime errors, semantic errors and logical errors. So now we'll see one by one. When it comes to the syntax errors, so you have to understand one thing. If you are writing a program, it has to follow some standards. It has to follow some standards or rules. So that rules while writing a program is called as what? Syntax. So syntax error in the sense what? Violation of that rules. That is nothing but syntax errors. So then what is syntax? Here the syntax is a set of rules. So we have to follow that rule while creating the statements of a program. So program is nothing but what? It is a set of instruction that will going to satisfy the user requirement, right? So by making use of any of the programming languages, we are going to code the program solution. So syntax in the sense what? It is a set of rules that needs to be followed. It is a set of standards that needs to be followed while creating the statements of a solution to a given problem. Or that means what? It has a set of statement. That statements grouped as a program. So set of rules which should be followed while creating the statements of the program. This is nothing but syntax. So if there any violation occurs to this syntax, at the time we are end up with errors. So that kind of errors now known as what? Syntax errors. So the grammatical mistakes. For example, if we are including the header files, then that must be enclosed between the angular bracket, right? So instead of that, I am going to take the parenthesis. This is one of the mistakes. So at the time, which kind of error will going to happen? That is syntax error. So because there is a grammatical mistakes in the statement of a solution to a given program. So that kind of errors are known as what? Syntax error. The grammatical mistakes in the statements of the program are called syntax errors. So now we'll see the example for this syntax error. How the syntax error will going to occur. So now I have analyzed the program. That means I have analyzed the problem and I have written a code by making use of the C++ programming languages. So you must understand that first we have to include an header files, then the main function will going to start. So the main function is the actual place where the execution get started. So here void main in the sense where the actual execution of a program get started. So this opening and closing of a flower braces indicates set of statement because program is a set of instruction, right? If there any grammatical mistakes occur in this syntax, then that is known as what? Syntax errors. So here I am taking 2 numbers. So what I am doing? I am taking 2 numbers and I am adding those 2 numbers. So I have written an algorithm and I have written a flowchart. Now that will be converted into programming language. So that here we are taking 2 variables called A and B. That is of the integer type. So that means what? If it is int, that will going to accept only whole numbers. So that I can give the value of A as 10 and value of B as 20. Okay. Next, we have a cout statement. So this cout statement will going to display the content whatever it has written in between the double quotes. So if you look into the image, that means if you look into the code deeply, so here what they have missed? Here they have missed double quotes. They have taken only single quote in one side and they have taken double quotes in another side. So this kind of errors is nothing but syntax error. When they compile this program, at the time it will going to show me the error. So there will be a syntax error. Okay, so enter the number. It has to end with semicolon. So this semicolon indicates the termination of a given line. So now I have taken an output. Then which is the next stage? I have to accept the input. How we are going to accept the input? That is with the help of this CIN statement. So CIN A and B. I am taking two values A and B. Okay, don't write like this. CIN A comma B. So don't write like this. So instead of that, if you are taking more than one variable as an input, that is known as input cascading. So that it has to be like this. Okay, C, A and B. Then I am performing the addition of that A and B. How I am going to display the value of that A and B addition value? So that is with the help of this cout statement. Cout A plus B. Then did I terminate that statement? No. So I will be end up with syntax error. So if you are writing any of the line, at the end it must get terminated. So that will with the help of this semicolon. So here they have missed semicolon. So it will going to give the syntax error. So these kind of grammatical mistakes are known as what? Syntax error. So at last we are supposed to close the program. That is closing of main function. So this is regarding syntax error. What is the next error? That is runtime error. Understand one thing? I have written a code and I have to compile. So compile in the sense what? I am going to check whether is there any errors or not. If there is no error, then I can run the program. First, writing of a program. Then it will get compiled. So if there any errors occur in this compilation, it will going to give me the compile time errors. So if there is no error, there is no bug, at that time it will leads me to the running of a program. So then what if I get any errors in the runtime? So that kind of errors are known as what? Runtime errors. That is, during the execution of a program, some errors may occur. So these kind of errors will not get to know in the time of compilation. Okay, so that kind of errors will going to occur in while doing or while taking the execution of a program. That kind of errors are known as what? Runtime error. So these kind of errors occur at the execution of a program. Then which is the example for this? Divide by 0. Divide by 0. If any number is divided by 0, then what will be the answer? So we are going to get 0 as it is, right? So if any number is trying to divide it by 0, for example, here I have a 23, I am trying this 23 to be divided by 0. So these kind of errors will get to know in the time of execution of a program. That is known as what? Runtime errors. Then which is the next type of error? That is semantic error. Syntax and semantic. So syntax is nothing but what? Grammatical mistakes. So when it comes to the semantic errors, it is improper usage of the statement in a programming language. So then what do you mean by improper usage of the statements? We'll see now. So an error which occurs due to improper usage of the statements. So programs are nothing but set of statement, right? So each statement will going to give something to the program. So it will lead to a solution for a given problem, right? So if there any improper usage of that statement occurs, that kind of errors are known as what? Semantic errors. Let me take one example to make you understand what is this semantic errors. So syntax is related to grammatical mistakes. So when it comes to the semantic, it is an improper usage of that statement. Okay. So that kind of errors are known as semantic errors. So let me take one example. Here, sum is equal to a plus b. So what I am doing? I am taking two variables a and b. I am adding those two variables and I am copying the value of that variable to sum. You have to understand one thing. This is nothing but assignment operator. Equal is nothing but assignment operator. How the assignment will going to happen? So whatever the content is there on the RHS, that must be copied to the left hand side. So that is nothing but it is a proper usage or proper assignment. So one more example, a is equal to 10. So what it means? What is the value of a now? So it is nothing but 10. So instead of that, if I take like this, 10 is equal to a. Whether it is a proper usage of the statement? No, it is a wrong usage of the statement. So when we are doing the wrong usage of that statement, then we will end up with this semantic errors. So that kind of errors are known as what? Semantic errors. So instead of this one, if they have taken a plus b is equal to sum, it is a wrong assignment. So this is nothing but what? Semantic errors. So otherwise, you can also take like this, c is equal to a plus b. It is a proper usage. So instead of that, if I do like this, a plus b is equal to c, then this is also improper usage of the statement. So when we got these kind of errors, that comes under semantic errors. Next, we have a logical errors. First, we need to analyze the problem. Then we are supposed to write a code for that problem. But what if I miss the logic? Instead of taking an area of a circle as pi r square, I am going to take only pi r. Then who will get to know that it is an error or it is a mistake? So at that time, we are not going to get the desired result, right? So that kind of errors are known as what? Logical errors. So the logical errors occurs when there is a mistakes in the logic of a program. So here what will going to happen? So it will be not identified by the compiler. So I'm going to write a code and then it will give me to the compilation. At that time, compiler will not going to know. So what is the error? But we are not going to get the desired output. So that is known as what? Logical error. It is a mistakes in the logic of a program. For example, how to find the area of a circle? Area of circle. So here I have a code. How to find the area of a circle? That is pi r square, right? So instead of that, we are going to take 1.4 into r into r. So this r is nothing but what? Radius. So this is a proper logic, right? So instead of that, I am going to take only pi r. Does it will going to give me the proper area of a circle? No. But who will going to give this error? None. That is, at the compilation time or even at the run time, we doesn't get to know this is an error. But we are not going to get the proper output or a specified output. So that kind of errors are known as what? Logical errors. So at that time, what will going to happen? 3.14 into r. So whatever the value that I have given for the r, that will be multiplied with this 3.14. But it will not going to give me the proper area of a circle. So these kind of errors are known as what? Logical errors. That is, other errors like logical errors are not displayed on the time of a compilation. So compilation, if it is okay, then we are going to run the program. So when we are compiling this logical errors, that means when we are compiling the program, if there any logical errors is there, that won't displayed on the screen, okay? Because the compiler does not understand the logic of a program. So only if the compiler get to know what is the logic, then it will make the corrections. But compiler does not know the logic of that program. For example, sum is equal to a minus b. Sum is equal to a plus b. Which is the proper usage of the statements here? Which is the proper usage of the logic? So if it is sum, it must be addition. If it is subtraction, it must be subtraction symbol is there. But here I am taking sum as a variable, but I am doing subtraction. Then this kind of errors are known as what? Logical errors. So whatever the terminologies that we are going to use, that must reflect on the program. So this is regarding types of errors, that is what? Syntax errors, logical errors, runtime errors and semantic errors. Let me move on to the next stage, that is documentation and maintenance. So till now we have specified the problem, we have analyzed and we have written a code. That means by making use of the designing tools, that is algorithm and flowchart, then we have designed a program, that is coding, then we have checked the errors, then we debugged and it has compiled, and we are going to get some of the errors. After all the thing, it has to be documented, right? So why the documentation is required? For the future use. So documentation is nothing but what? It is a reference material. So if I am doing all these things without recording the video, what will going to happen? So that will be not in the form of documentation. So it will going to happen as a reference material which explain the use and maintenance of the program application for which it has been written. So why we are going to write a program? In order to find a solution for the given problem. So if I am not recording anything or if I am not maintaining any of the documents, then that will be problem, right? So in order to avoid that, we are going to make a documentation. So it is a reference material which will going to explain the usage and maintenance of a program application. What is the cause? What is the problem? Why we have written all this code and how to do this and how we are going to update that one. Everything will get documented. So that is acts as a reference material. So that is nothing but what? Documentation, right? So then what are the types of documentation is there? There are two types of documentation, that is internal and external documentation. So when it comes to the internal documentation, internal in the sense, who will going to write a program? That is program developer, right? So they are going to write a program in the terms of technically, right? So this is also known as technical documentation. Internal in the sense that will be more useful for the person, one who has written a code for the given program. So it is also known as what? Technical documentation. If it is technical, then that will be related as a internal documentation. So if it is internal documentation, it is mainly meant for the programmer who has written a code for the given problem. So they have analyzed the problem, they have analyzed what are the input and output requires, they have written the flowchart, they have written the algorithm, and they have converted that into programming, right? They know everything, and that is in and out of a problem solution. So when we are using this internal documentation, that will be mainly helpful for the person, that is programmer, one who has written the program and one who is going to update in the future stages. So what this internal documentation will going to contain? So it will going to contain the defining the meaningful variable names. So for example, here I am finding a sum of two numbers. So which are the two numbers? I may take this as A and B, or I may take this as X and Y. So what is this represents? So this represents the variable name. So here I need to document it like X is nothing but variable 1 and Y is nothing but variable 2. So if I am working on these stages after the documentation or after the program maintenance, so I will get to know that yes, this X is nothing but variable 1 and Y is nothing but variable 2. So here, by making use of this internal documentation, they will going to give in and out of a programming. So that will mainly helpful for the programmer, one who is going to update. If there are any changes required or if there are any modification required, I must know the root, right? So I must do it from the scratch. So there is a variables names is there. So I have to define it clearly. So including the comments in the program code. So why I'm writing this line, why I'm taking this variables, so why I'm including this header files, what is the main function, everything is required in the type of comments. So comments are nothing but reference. So if we look into that comments, I will get to know that yes, they are doing this task. So that kind of data will be saved with the help of this internal documentation. Then presenting the program code clearly. Here I am taking the sum is equal to, it has to be clear like sum is equal to A plus B. So instead of that, if I am taking sum is equal to A multiplication B, did they get to know that it is whether it is addition or a multiplication? So there must be a proper or clear usage of the programming codes. So these can be done with the help of this internal documentation. Which is the next type of document? That is external documentation. As the name indicates, external in the sense what? It will be useful for the person who have not written the code or who doesn't know the in and out of that programming code. So when it comes to the external documentation, so let me take one example to make you understand how this external documentation will going to work. So for example, if you buy any of the electronic goods, at that time we are going to get one guide. So that means what? That is reference book. So in that also what and all included? So they have included what is this material is comprises of, and how to use that. Every data will be there. So even though we doesn't know how the internal working will going to happen, but when we look into that documentation, we will get to know how to use that one, how to use that device. So in the same way, when it comes to the external documentation, here also we are going to give the solution. That means we are going to give the textual information to the person, one who doesn't know the in and out of a programming application. So that is nothing but what? External documentation. So the program or application is supported with the additional textual information about the application. I know how this application is working, but if I look into this external documentation, I can get to know that yes, they have written a code, they have find a solution for the given problem. So it will also helpful for the person, for the user. So here we are doing all these stages only to satisfy the requirement of user. Then user must get to know how to use this application. That documentation will be stored in the external documentation. That will also helpful for the user or a administrator. Admin in the sense what? They are going to look into the user, who are all the user of this program, who are all taking the benefits, and how much it will going to cost, how it will going to be implemented. Everything will be get to know to the user and as well as the administrator with the help of this external documentation, and it also helpful for the developer. So how this is helpful for the developer? Someone has written a code, but I'm going to get a call, I need a upgradation for the already existing code. So if I look into the external documentation, at that time I will get to know what are the in and out of that program and how they have written, what are the methods they have used and how to use that application. Everything I get to know, so that with the help of that I can add some more content to the existing data. So that kind of documentation is known as what? External documentation. So we have analyzed, we have designed, and we have did the coding or a programming, testing is done, debugging is done, and we are done with the documentation. What will be the last stage of a problem solving? That is maintenance. So why the maintenance is required? So now as per my requirements, I feel that yes, whatever the solution is given to the problem, I'm fine. But what if I get another idea, or what if I want to have one more module to the existing data? At that time maintenance is important. It is a continuous process. So program maintenance means the periodic review of the programs and modification based on the user requirement. So for example, in a certain program, I am going to write a code only to find the area of a triangle. But after some more days, I may feel like I want to find the area of a rectangle also. Area of a rectangle also. At that time, what I am going to do? Am I going to change the code of the previous one? No. Instead of that, I am going to modify the content. I am going to upgrade the existing content. So that maintenance is important. When the user requirement getting changed, at that time program must get updated. So that is nothing but program maintenance. So the periodic review of a programs and modification has to be takes place. As I told, if the requirement of the user getting changed, then the modification has to happen. So how this modification will going to happen? That is when there is a proper maintenance. So that is regarding maintenance. So this maintenance is a continuous task. So when the requirement changes, it has to get updated or modified. So how this maintenance will going to work properly? When there is a proper documentation, when there will be a proper documentation of a solution for the given problem, then maintenance can be worked properly. So that documentation plays an important role in the program maintenance. If everything got documented properly, then by referring that documentation, I can update or I can modify the existed content based on the user requirement. So this is regarding the stages of a problem solving methodology. If we consider the stages of a problem solving methodology, which was the first stage, that is problem definition. So there we are going to define the problem, isn't it? After that, we are going to analyze that problem, that is problem analysis. Then once I analyze the problem, I am going to design a solution by making use of the designing tools. So which are the designing tools that I have discussed? Algorithm and flowchart. So once the designing is done, then it has to be converted into any of the programming languages. That is known as what? Coding or programming. So I have written a code. Now it's my turn to test that code. So testing in the sense what? It will going to check whether this is working as per the requirement of user or not. So if it is working fine, then there will be no problem. So after testing, we are going to have a debugging. So debugging in the sense what? Checking and correcting of an errors. If there any mistakes occurs, if there any bugs occurs. So that is known as what? Debugging. So when it is completed all these things, we have to document it. That is program documentation. So once the program documentation is done, it will be helpful in order to maintain or upgradation or modification of a given problem. Okay, so these are the stages we came across in order to solve a problem. So problem solving methodology is nothing but what? It is a task of expressing the complex problem in terms of simple solution which must be understood by the computer. So problem definition, analysis, designing tools, and we are going to write a code. We are going to check that code. If there are any errors, that will be rectified by debugging, and proper documentation will be required. With that documentation, the maintenance of that application will be more helpful. So these are the stages of a problem solving methodology. It's all about today's session. In my next session, I am going to discuss the programming constructs. So this will be my next session topic. I hope you all understood with today's session. I'm going to meet you in the next session. Until that, keep learning, keep on growing. Thank you very much.